A poor rancher rescued two Apache sisters from certain death. The next day, their chief returned with a decision that stunned the entire frontier. The world seemed to freeze in that moment, dust hanging in the air like suspended gold. The rancher's heartbeat drumming in his ears as 20 Apache warriors surrounded his small cabin. Their faces painted for war, arrows nocked, spears pointed at his chest. No man survived such an encounter. The rancher's hand hovered near his pistol, knowing it held only 2 bullets against 20 warriors. His parched lips tasted of fear and the bitter copper of blood. The Apache chief dismounted, his eagle feather headdress swaying with each deliberate step, dark eyes boring into the rancher's soul. Between them lay only 10 feet of dust and a century of bloodshed. If 20 warriors surrounded your home, demanding what you believed was rightfully yours, would you surrender what you saved, or stand your ground even if it meant certain death? The rancher swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing like a cork in a river. His choice in the next heartbeat would change the course of the entire Arizona territory forever. 2 days earlier, Jacob Holloway wiped sweat from his brow as he inspected the withering corn stalks on his modest ranch. 3 years of back-breaking work, and the merciless Arizona drought threatened to take it all. His calloused hands, once soft from counting ledgers back east, now bore the scars of frontier life. The small cabin he'd built stood as a lonely outpost against the vast, unforgiving landscape. Inside hung a portrait of his wife Sarah, dead from fever their first winter. Jacob spoke to her sometimes when the solitude grew too heavy to bear. "Another bad season, Sarah," he whispered to the wind. "I'm not sure how much longer I can hold on." His nearest neighbors were 20 miles away, and the Apache raids had grown more frequent as settlers pushed deeper into their ancestral lands. If stories like this speak to you, consider subscribing so you won't miss the next one. As dusk approached, Jacob led his only horse to water at the small creek that marked the edge of his property. The animal suddenly jerked its head up, ears twitching nervously. Jacob reached for his rifle, eyes scanning the golden-hued landscape. A sound, barely perceptible, caught his attention. A whimper, perhaps, or a moan. He moved cautiously toward a cluster of rocks, rifle ready. What he found made his heart sink. 2 young Apache women, barely more than girls, lay huddled together. Their deerskin dresses were torn and bloodied. One clutched a deep wound in her side. The other appeared unconscious, her breathing shallow and labored. Jacob immediately recognized them as Apache from their dress and the distinctive tribal markings. Every instinct told him to walk away. Harboring Apache, even wounded ones, could bring death, from whites who viewed all Indians as savages, or from the Apache themselves, who might see his intervention as captivity. The conscious girl's eyes met his, filled not with hatred, but with a silent plea. Jacob knew he faced a choice that would define whatever remained of his soul. Help them and risk everything, or turn away and survive another day in his empty existence. He set his rifle down and knelt beside them. "I won't hurt you," he said softly, knowing his words meant nothing to her. Through gestures, he offered help. The girl's eyes narrowed with suspicion, then widened with pain as her sister moaned. Jacob carefully lifted the unconscious girl, nodding for the other to follow. Every step back to his cabin felt like walking on the edge of a knife. But his kindness would soon summon something far greater than gratitude. It would awaken an ancient code that few white men ever lived to witness. By morning, Jacob had done what he could. The older sister, who seemed about 17, had a fever but no serious wounds. The younger one, perhaps 15, had lost blood from a deep cut in her side, which Jacob had cleaned and bandaged with strips of his only good shirt. Neither spoke English, and Jacob knew no Apache words, but they communicated through gestures. He learned they had been attacked, not by white men as he'd first assumed, but by a rival tribe. The older girl made signs of warriors chasing them, of hiding, of days without food. Jacob shared his meager rations, watching as they devoured the cornbread and jerky with desperate hunger. As they ate, hoofbeats approached. Jacob's heart hammered against his ribs. He peered through a crack in the shutters to see 3 riders, white men from the settlement. He recognized Tom Blackwood, a rancher known for his hatred of Injuns, alongside 2 others. Jacob stepped outside, closing the door behind him. "Morning, Holloway," Blackwood called, not dismounting. "Tracking a couple of Apache squaws. Caught 'em stealing horses yesterday. Trail leads this way." Jacob's mouth went dry. "Haven't seen anyone. Been working my south field all day." Blackwood's eyes narrowed. "Mind if we look around?" "Actually, I do mind," Jacob replied, hand moving instinctively toward the pistol tucked in his belt. "Got nothing worth stealing here anyway." "Unless you're hiding something," one of the other men suggested, leaning forward in his saddle. "Just my privacy," Jacob answered, "and I'd appreciate you respecting it." Blackwood spat tobacco juice into the dust. "Getting mighty particular for a man living alone out here. Almost makes a person wonder if you've gone Injun lover." The accusation hung in the air like a storm cloud. If these men found the girls, they'd likely kill them, and possibly Jacob too, for protecting them. "I've got work to do," Jacob said firmly. "So unless you're planning to shoot an unarmed white man on his own property, I suggest you move along." After a tense silence, Blackwood jerked his horse around. "We'll be watching you, Holloway. Folks tend to disappear out here when they forget which side they're on." As they rode away, Jacob leaned against his cabin wall, legs suddenly weak. Inside, the older Apache girl stood near the door, a kitchen knife clutched in her hand. She'd understood enough to know the danger. She made a gesture of gratitude, then pointed east, indicating they should leave. Jacob shook his head. "Your sister can't travel yet." He pointed to the younger girl, still feverish on his cot. What he didn't say was that Blackwood and his men would be watching the trails. The girl's only chance was to wait until dark. As sunset approached, Jacob was chopping wood when he felt it, a stillness in the air, the sudden silence of birds. He turned slowly to find 5 Apache warriors at the edge of his property, watching him with expressionless faces. One stepped forward, hand raised in a gesture that might have been peace or might have been a command. Jacob stood frozen, the axe heavy in his hands, knowing it would offer no defense. The warrior spoke a few words, then pointed to the cabin. Somehow they knew. Jacob hesitated, then slowly nodded and led them to his door. Inside, the older girl rushed to the warriors, speaking rapidly in their language. The younger one attempted to rise but fell back weakly. The lead warrior inspected her wounds, then turned to Jacob with an intensity that made his skin crawl. In broken English, he said, "These daughters of Red Hawk, Chief's daughters." He gestured to the unconscious girl. "This one die without white man's help?" Jacob nodded solemnly. "Probably." The wound was deep. The warrior studied him for a long moment, then said, "Red Hawk come tomorrow. You stay." It wasn't a request. After they left, taking the older girl with them, but leaving the younger one to recover, Jacob sat on his porch with his rifle across his knees. Inside his cabin lay the daughter of an Apache chief. Outside, Blackwood and his men might return at any moment. And tomorrow would bring Red Hawk himself, a name whispered with fear throughout the territory. Jacob watched the stars emerge in the darkening sky, wondering if they were the last he'd ever see. And in that silence, the land itself seemed to hold its breath. If you were caught between 2 deadly forces, settlers who would kill you as a traitor, and Apache warriors who might see you as an enemy, would you flee in the night or stand your ground and face what comes? Dawn broke with an unnatural quiet. No birds sang, no wind stirred the scrub brush. Jacob had barely slept, dividing his time between watching for Blackwood's return and checking on the Apache girl, whose fever had finally broken near midnight. She now sat up on his cot, drinking water and watching him with cautious eyes. Jacob paced the small cabin, checking his rifle and pistol, though he knew they would offer little protection against what was coming. By mid-morning, he heard them, not just a few warriors, but many. He stepped onto his porch, rifle held loosely at his side, and watched as 20 Apache riders emerged from the eastern ravine. They surrounded his small homestead in a circle of silent judgment. At their center rode a man whose very presence commanded attention. Red Hawk, wearing a magnificent headdress of eagle feathers and the scars of countless battles on his weathered face. The chief dismounted with the fluid grace of a man half his age. The older daughter appeared at his side, speaking urgently while gesturing toward Jacob and the cabin. Red Hawk listened impassively, his dark eyes never leaving Jacob's face. When she finished, he stepped forward. "I am Red Hawk," he stated in surprisingly clear English. "You save my daughters." Jacob nodded, unsure whether to speak. "Why?" the chief demanded. "White men kill Apache. Apache kill white men. This is the way for many seasons. Why you different?" Jacob swallowed, knowing his next words might determine whether he lived to see sunset. They needed help. I couldn't turn away. Red Hawk's face remained unreadable. "Many white men would say I should kill you, take your scalp, burn your house. This would be simple." The warriors tightened their circle. Jacob felt sweat trickle down his spine, despite the cool morning air. "My youngest daughter says you gave her your medicine, your food, your bed, while you sleep on floor," Red Hawk continued. "She says you stand against your own people to protect her." Inside the cabin, movement caught Jacob's eye. The younger daughter had appeared in the doorway, leaning weakly against the frame. She spoke to her father in their language, her voice soft but insistent. Red Hawk listened, then turned back to Jacob. "She says you have honor. This is rare thing." From beneath his buckskin shirt, the chief withdrew something that made Jacob's breath catch. A silver pocket watch with the initials JH engraved on its cover. "This yours?" Red Hawk asked. Jacob hadn't seen the watch in nearly 3 years. "It was my father's," he answered quietly. "Taken during a raid on a wagon train near Fort Breckenridge. I took this watch from body of white man who killed 3 children of my tribe," Red Hawk stated flatly. "Not your father. Another man had it. Man with no honor." Jacob stared at the watch, the last link to his life before the frontier. "Why show me this now?" "To tell you that things are not always what they seem," Red Hawk replied. "White men think all Apache same. Apache think all white men same." He held the watch out to Jacob. "Sometimes we are wrong." With trembling fingers, Jacob accepted the timepiece. "Kindness could cost me my life, but cruelty would have already killed my soul," he thought as the cold silver warmed in his palm. "I have made decision," Red Hawk announced, his voice carrying to all his warriors. "This man saved my blood. Our people repay such debts." A murmur ran through the assembled warriors. Some nodded, others frowned in disagreement. "From this day," Red Hawk continued, "this land where you stand is protected by Apache. No warrior will harm you or what is yours." He pointed to the hills beyond Jacob's failing crops. "Water comes from mountains through hidden paths beneath ground. My people will show you these paths. Your crops will grow." Jacob stood stunned, unable to form words as the chief's meaning became clear. Red Hawk wasn't finished, but this protection has price. "When Apache are hunted, when our children starve because white soldiers keep us from hunting grounds, you will speak for us to your people. You will be bridge between worlds." The weight of this responsibility settled on Jacob's shoulders. To be an advocate for the Apache would make him an outcast among his own kind. Yet, staring into Red Hawk's fierce eyes, he knew his answer. "I will," he promised. As if summoned by his words, hoofbeats approached from the west. 6 riders appeared, Blackwood and his men, reinforced with others from town. They pulled up short at the sight of the Apache warriors. "What the hell?" Blackwood shouted, reaching for his gun. "Hold," Jacob called out, stepping between the two groups. "There will be no fighting here today. Looks like we were right about you, Holloway, siding with savages against your own kind." Jacob stood his ground. "The only savagery I've seen lately came from men who'd kill injured girls for the crime of being born Apache." Blackwood's face darkened. "You're a dead man, Holloway. If not today, then soon." "This man under protection of Red Hawk now," the chief stated, moving to stand shoulder to shoulder with Jacob. "Any man who brings him harm will face Apache justice." The standoff stretched like a bowstring pulled to breaking. 20 Apache warriors against 6 white men. Blood would flow either way. Blackwood's men exchanged nervous glances, their hands hovering over their weapons. Then, unexpectedly, the younger Apache daughter stumbled forward, still weak from her wounds. She placed herself directly in the line of fire, looking first at the white settlers, then at the warriors, and finally at her father and Jacob. In halting, recently learned English, she said one word that cut through the tension: peace. A warrior came forward with a bundle wrapped in hide. At Red Hawk's nod, he unwrapped it, revealing a peace pipe. Not just any pipe, but one adorned with symbols of both Apache and white man's world. Red Hawk took it solemnly. "My daughter speaks wisdom," he said. "Today we choose different path. Today we remember that land is for all who respect it." He offered the pipe first to Jacob, who took a ceremonial puff. Then, in a gesture that shocked everyone present, extended it toward Blackwood. The rancher stared at the offered pipe, conflict evident on his weathered face. Behind him, one of his men whispered, "Don't do it, Tom. Don't trust these devils." But something had shifted in the charged air. Perhaps it was the unexpected sight of a white man standing with the Apache, or the young girl's plea, or simply the recognition that more blood would solve nothing. Slowly, Blackwood dismounted and approached. "This doesn't make us friends," he growled. But he accepted the pipe and took a short puff before handing it back. "Not friends," Red Hawk agreed, "but not enemies today." As the sun reached its zenith, an uneasy truce settled over the gathering. The Apache showed Jacob the underground springs that would save his crops. Blackwood and his men departed, still suspicious, but without violence. And Jacob Holloway found himself in a position no one could have imagined. A man between worlds, trusted by both, yet fully belonging to neither. That evening, as the Apache prepared to leave with both daughters now safely recovered, Red Hawk clasped Jacob's arm in the warrior's grip. "My people will watch over you, even when you do not see them," he promised. "And when time comes that you need us, make signal of hawk in sky with smoke, and we will come." Jacob nodded, understanding the profound nature of the alliance formed this day. "I will honor our agreement," he vowed. As they rode away, the younger daughter turned back once, raising her hand in farewell. Jacob returned the gesture, seeing in her eyes not just gratitude, but something more, the recognition of a shared humanity that transcended the boundaries of race and history. In the years that followed, Jacob's ranch flourished with the knowledge of the hidden springs. True to his word, he became an advocate for the Apache, speaking against military campaigns that pushed them from their lands, arguing for treaties that would be honored rather than broken. Many settlers called him traitor, but others came to respect his position as intermediary. When tensions flared, it was often Jacob who was called upon to negotiate peace. The story of the rancher and the Apache chief spread throughout the territory, becoming almost mythical with each retelling. Some claimed it never happened. Others swore it changed the course of history for that corner of the frontier. What none could deny was that on Jacob Holloway's land, Apache and white settlers alike found neutral ground, a small island of peace in a sea of conflict. Decades later, when Jacob's hair had turned white and his hands grown gnarled with age, a young army lieutenant visited his ranch, seeking advice on Apache customs before taking command at the nearby fort. As they sat on the porch Jacob had rebuilt and expanded over the years, the lieutenant noticed something unusual. The silver pocket watch Jacob wore bore both his initials and, engraved later, an Apache symbol. "What does it mean?" the lieutenant asked. Jacob's weathered face creased in a smile as he traced the symbol with his thumb. "It means that sometimes courage is measured not by who you're willing to kill, but by who you're willing to save." He gazed toward the eastern hills where the Apaches still lived, now on a reservation but still proud. "When you face your moment of truth on this frontier, young man, will you choose hatred or humanity? Because that choice, more than any battle, will be your true legacy." Subscribe for more powerful stories like this, and click on the video on the screen to watch the next one with a twist so powerful you'll never forget it.